Quite a lot of detail in relationship with the family, their responsibility one to another, their responsibility to God, and their responsibility to those in the world. And we're looking now at youth and the importance of certain things that are virtually accepted by the culture all around us without even thinking about or questioning. And so we want to consider this whole matter of the practice of dating. And I can remember that there was always a certain group of people, even in my day and age, that as a teenager and early 20s, well, they're dating. They're going steady, things of this nature. The question we're going to ask is, what's wrong with dating? The average person will say, nothing. How else are you going to get to know somebody if you don't date them? Well, there is an alternative, and the alternative is a very good one and a very safe one. First of all, be friends with everyone. Boys and girls, men and women, just be friends. And don't plug into people. Getting really tight or in close, don't do that. The thing that you need to do is simply know them in a natural and relaxed way and in enjoyable situations. And don't zero in on one person. And wait until God gives you the direction of whom you should marry. And that will come. God will show you if you desire that. All right. One psychologist who incidentally is not even a Christian. And this individual is not a Christian, wants nothing to do with Christianity. But he takes certain biblical principles and he embraces those as a standard of life and living. Had some very accurate comments on the dangerous side effects of dating. He called the dating scene a dangerous and unhealthy practice, and probably the reason the divorce rate in America is 4 times higher than any Western country. His comments were, well, he had a number of things to say. And so we will look at those things. A, dating imposes on a social tyranny. It is really amazing the pressure that you face when you're getting into this cultural mindset, which really can be very destructive. Dating forces insecure boys and girls into going steady relationships just for the sake of having that assurance. They will have someone to attend social functions with, thereby gaining social acceptance of their peers. Going steady is for some little more than an insurance policy, assuring them they will always have someone to go with. In college, the Bible college that I attended, you weren't allowed to date anyone in the 4 years of the college. You just weren't allowed to do that. You were there to focus upon learning the things of God, biblical principles and biblical truths. And those were the things that were pressed. Does that mean that there's no fun and games? Oh, yes, we had all kinds of fun and games. But you had it as a group, not as pairing off and isolating oneself away from everybody else. It was a group involvement. And one of the things I liked to do in those days was roller skate. And about once or twice a month, they would have they would rent a roller rink, the college would. And the students would go there and skate. And it's interesting, I usually ended up with about 4 or 5 girls on each side of me, skating together. And that type of thing. We weren't dating. And some of most of them, I don't even remember their names. But it was just having good fun and a good time. There's a time and a place for getting married. In the Hebrew culture, a part of this whole idea of getting married was a family matter. Now, in America, we kind of like to think of it this way. Oh, you mean mom and dad actually picked somebody out for you? In essence, that did occur, that mom and dad did pick out somebody. What usually happened was when a person became a marriageable age, whether they was the male or the female. In the Hebrew culture, their families would begin to talk together about the marriage of perhaps the son of one family to the daughter of another family. Then they would get together, and there'd be a lot of conversation go on about this. Everybody had input, including the potential groom and the potential bride. They had their input, what they thought, what they felt. Everybody was listening to everybody, and oftentimes they would come to the conclusion that, well, this is not going to work. And so they would part their ways, not as enemies. It's just this is not what God's plan or purpose was. And eventually, they would find somebody, and arrangements were made. And it became a very serious thing when they came down to it. They actually drew up a contract, a legal contract, a binding contract for getting married. But remember, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion. This person likes this, that person likes that. All kinds of things were talked about until there was an agreement that was reached. And then a contract would be brought up and would be entered into. And so we need to realize that dating and going steady is really a very temporary situation. You basically isolate yourself from everyone else. You don't even consider anybody else. You don't even talk about anybody else. And that relationship will last either how long or how little, depending upon many factors. Well, B, he continues, dating fosters a subtle form of mutual exploitation. It produces predatory males and spoiled females. And that begins to become their attitude and their lifestyle, that they will eventually even enter into a marriage in that type of situation. C, dating inspires the idea of variety and change in boy-girl relationships. Many young people date many different boys and girls. One week they are with one, and the next week with another. They are quick to break off relationships for minor reasons and quickly begin another relationship. Contrary to what most parents and authorities think, this is not a good practice, for it is often carries over into marriage. Thus, the seeds of divorce are planted even as they date or go steady. If this doesn't work out, we're out of here. In our culture, that has deteriorated to the point that people just say, well, hey, why get married? We'll live together for as long as it works. And if it doesn't work, we just split. And as we pointed out earlier, 4 times higher in divorce in America than in other Western countries. They are quick to break off relationships for minor reasons and quickly begin another. Contrary to what most parents and authorities think, this is not a good practice, for it often carries over into marriage. They are not as inclined to work out or overcome their problems within marriage, hence the divorce habit. The fact is simply this: none of us are perfect. The reason? All of us are sinners. Even Christians have sin as a background in their life. And even Christians sometimes will stumble into sin. No one is perfect. Therefore, there is no such thing as a perfect marriage. But in a marriage, you learn to work with the difficulties, the conflicts, and the problems. You don't throw them away and say, well, I'll try somebody else. Whether that happens in dating, going steady, or in marriage, it simply means that becomes the easy way out, they think. What it really does is they go into the next relationship carrying that same problem with them. And that problem can manifest itself again and again and again. It's never dealt with. It is very important that we remember that God does not approve of divorce. In fact, the scripture says he hates it. So we shouldn't be getting into things that are likely to cause it. D, among youngsters, these are preteens who are not wage earners, obviously, dating gives a distorted attitude towards money. Parents freely dole out whatever is needed for going out, and movies, proms, etc. are quite expensive these days, to say nothing of the cost of running and maintaining an automobile. E, dating has promoted a high degree of fornication, illegitimate pregnancy, and venereal disease among youth. In many places, it's at epidemic proportions. They have a private portable bedroom in the automobile, or about any other vehicle for that matter. F, dating complicates the relationship between parents and children. If they're dating, they're going steady and this sort of thing, they think they are mature adults. They think they are. And that causes problems in the family. Let's talk a little bit about the practice of going steady. That's a innocent word for let's get engaged. Though they won't use the word engaged, we're going steady. But that's to take it from the next step of just dating to, well, we zero in on this one particular individual. We consider nobody else. Even though we're not really mature enough yet to make a lifetime decision on that subject. Couples who go steady most often take on mutual concerns and sexual relationships, just as married couples. Surveys reveal that among steadies, the female is usually the dominant party, manipulating the male through sex or withdrawal of affection. The significance is that the male is being prepared for marriage, not as a leader in the family as God has intended, but as someone to be manipulated, to be used, and basically controlled in many ways by the items that we just mentioned here. These are all things that go on. They become a part of our society, a part of our culture, and most people hardly give it a thought anymore. It just is the way things are, and yet there's a much better way. Going steady is not to be confused with being engaged. They're actually entirely two different things. They are not the same. Engagement in the Bible is called betrothal. Engagement then was a very firm committal to one another. And if it were broken off, there had to be a bill of divorcement, even though the marriage had not taken place or been consummated. Again, the families, they discuss if this is going to be a good marital situation. Much discussion over a period of weeks, months, even years in some cases. And what they do then at this point, when they arrive at the idea that this will be a good marriage, the bill of betrothal was drawn up. It basically states this, that the groom and the bride are actually going to get married at some point in the future. Historically, within a year, on a few occasions, longer than a year. During that betrothal period, they were considered legally married, though there was no marriage ceremony, no marriage committal as such, other than the contract that they would marry. And therefore, they would get to know and understand many things, and they could research even more about this relationship. This contract, under the ancient Hebrews, could not be broken unless something could be shown that was inappropriate. In other words, there was sexual activity that was going on somewhere else, in which case the marriage, the betrothal, would be broken. And as such, a divorce took place. And it was officially and publicly a divorce. And these two were separated and could not marry because of what was found out about them. And this is obviously a very sensitive area, and the families would think about these things. And in the Hebrew culture, in practice, it worked out that marriage was generally permanent. Not like it is today, that it's just an option. Divorce is just an option to get out of it. And Jesus even put his stamp of approval up on divorce for sexual immorality only. And that was before they actually had the marriage ceremony, and that was before the consummation of the marriage sexually had taken place. A divorce could be granted. If that was not found out until after the wedding and to the consummation, divorce was to be considered permanent in God's eyes. Work out the difficulties. Work out the difficulties is what was the whole matter of what they were to do. Why is the practice of going steady so popular among teenagers. Why do they do it? Well, here's the reasons. It's the American custom. That is a mark of personal achievement. Hey, we're going steady. Woo! B, it makes it easier for the couple to excuse sinful sexual activity. They rationalize their sin because they'll probably get married. Doesn't justify it. Sin is still sin, and you can't paint it in any other way other than that, biblically speaking. And we have to look at it as God looks at it. C, American boys and girls are basically insecure. The idea of dating, pairing off, the idea of going steady, all this type of thing, this breeds insecurity in individuals. It really does. And it's something that could be real problematic in a marriage. What are the fruits of going steady? What can you expect from those who are going steady? Well, there is a large percentage of fornication among the steadies. Yeah. Oh, we're going to get married someday. Why not? There is a large percentage of pregnant brides among those who go steady. C, there is a huge increase in venereal diseases. We don't hear a whole lot about those things today, do we? And yet they're out there. Did you know there's more than 60 varieties of venereal disease? Any number of them. Once you get them, you got it for life. Any number of them. Once you get it, you got it for life. And in many cases, these venereal diseases end in death, premature death. Yeah. D, there is a huge increase in illegitimate pregnancies. In other words, pregnancies are not even among those who are living together, going steady, dating, or anything like that. It just becomes a venue for what they call the one-night stand, that type of thing. There is a huge increase in divorce rates. The statistic is that if you're going to live together before you get married, you're 50% more likely to divorce after you get married. And of course, the argument is you wouldn't buy a car unless you drive it and try it out. Well, you don't get married unless you try each other out to see if it's exactly what you want. But it don't work that way in God's eyes. And the result is 50% higher divorce rate among those who live together before they got married. Wow. There is a huge increase in abortions. Any way you want to take that word, any way you try to justify that word, it basically ends in murder. That's the simple fact. It is utterly amazing how we talk about abortion today and demand our rights for abortion and this and that and the other. And as soon as that baby enters the birth canal, and if it has any part of its body within the birth canal, and the rest of the body has been born, that baby can be murdered. But after it's out of the womb, we can't murder it. And we've just gotten used to this as a way of speedily getting rid of an unwanted child. There are a multiplicity of problems with that all go along with that. The problems are enormous. Among the things is this: you never get over the death of that child, particularly the mother. Never. They will suffer that periodically throughout the rest of their life. And say, oh, that's a great thing to do. That's only talk to try to justify it in their own heart and mind. And to more people that they can get to agree with them that that's the popular thing to do, and the right thing to do, and the okay thing to do, that makes it easier for them. It does not change the facts. Sex by God was put in the bonds of marriage. A permanent relationship was God's plan. It's not to be done outside of marriage, because any sexual relationship can result in a pregnancy. There is no such thing as perfect birth control. That doesn't exist. Well, what about vasectomy and tubal ligation? Pregnancies have happened even after those procedures have been performed. There again, there is no 100% birth control. God's intent is sex is kept in marriage, which can produce children. That's the will, plan, and purpose of God. In the average woman's cycle, monthly cycle, there is about 12 to 24 hours in that monthly cycle that she actually can conceive. And nobody knows exactly when that time comes. They just don't know that. So, engaging in sexual activity outside of marriage is playing Russian roulette. Remember hearing about that? It's played with a revolver. You would take all the bullets out of the revolver. Sometimes there's a 6 shot, sometimes there's a 5 shot, some of them were 7 shots, whatever. You take all of them out but one. And then you spin the barrel. And then you put the gun to your head. And you pull the trigger. Well, I'm still here. That was one of the empties. And it's kind of the same way with pregnancy outside of marriage. It's out there. It can happen. It can happen the first time, or it can happen the 100th time, or any other time. These things are not the plan of God, they're not the will of God, and they're not to be entered into outside of the bonds of marriage. Some mistakes made by parents with their teenage children in the attitude toward the practice of dating. Parents often encourage boyfriend-girlfriend relationships too early in the children's lives. Too early. Remember, they don't reach full maturity to the age of 30. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to wait to 30, but it definitely does mean that there's got to be a lot of discussion about this matter of marriage. Are you sure this person is the will of God for you? Yes. That's the thing. This is not always a conscious encouragement, But both parents and grandparents are known to talk about how cute it is when the little ones hold hands. They also ask the kiddies, we're talking about preteens, little tykes, if they have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. Yeah, etc. It's bad enough that society contributes to children growing up too rapidly without parents and grandparents encouraging it. It as well. Society contributes in various ways. That is, the media, TV shows, modes of dress, social media. You can add that to the list today, too. Children should be allowed to grow up and mature at their own pace. Very important. Pressing a child beyond their ability because their maturity level has not reached that ability can injure psychologically, emotionally, sociologically, spiritually even, and sometimes physically, their future development. All these things enter into this, and there are matters that we need to really rethink how we do things in our American culture.